Greetings, Charles County. This is Friday, May 15th. My name is Jennifer Harris. I'm the Chief of Media Services for Charles County Government. Today we have a very special edition of Inside Your County Government. We haven't updated you in a while, but we had a very important decision made by a Board of County Commissioners last night. And today I'm joined by Commissioner President Reuben Collins, Commissioner Stewart, District 3, and Commissioner Coates from District 2. And we're going to be talking with them about their decision to go ahead and delay the institute of Phase 1 of Governor Hogan's order until May 29th. So our stay-at-home order is going to replace and remain in place in Charles County until that time. And after that, we will begin a phased approach recovery plan to initiate a safe and sensible path to reopen certain retail businesses, houses of worship, and other personal services. So we're going to talk a little bit about the details of that decision and help the public understand how we're moving forward and provide hopefully what will be a clearer picture for how we're going to continue emerge from this public health emergency. So Commissioner President Collins, can you tell us a little bit more about what happened in last night's meeting and what the decision means for our community?
Just a brief history. The governor established in one of his directives a concept that was called Maryland Strong Roadmap to Recovery. And in that Roadmap to Recovery, he detailed several phases that the state would use to eventually reopen the state of Maryland. Prior to May the 14th, the entire state had been operating under a stay-home order. As a result of the press conference and the release of information by the governor, he allowed each jurisdiction in the state of Maryland to tailor their own response and whether, in fact, they wanted to maintain the stay-home order or opt into Phase 1, which allowed certain specific businesses to reopen with very specific conditions. And so, as a county, by a 3-2 vote, we determined that we will follow the Phase 1 process, but we determined that we would begin that phase in on May the 29th. That's specifically what happened. There's not extreme differences between the Phase 1 phase and the actual stay-home order. There are some minor differences, I think. Most specifically, it does give a little more guidance for example, pet groomers to reopen and animal adoption shelters. It also gives very specific guidelines to retail stores that can reopen, but at a 50% capacity. And the thing that, most people saw that, that kind of lit up their interest was car washes and religious services. There was a plan, but there's a limitation of 50% capacity, but an encouragement that these businesses would operate outdoors, or churches would operate outdoors. So, in a nutshell, what the governor did was provide the locals an opportunity to tailor a response very specific to the needs of their community. And our county, by a 3-2 vote, opted to essentially just delay that actual phase into Phase 1. In that interim period, I anticipate that the board will deal more directly with responding to our local businesses in terms of having any questions about that transition, and when possible, providing potentially resources for those businesses transitioning into Phase 1.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Collins. That's a great set of details and information. I think that the public will want to understand about the order itself. It's hard to digest all of that in a brief news media report. Now, Commissioner Stewart, I would like to turn to you for a moment. I know that you really emphasized that this additional 2-week time frame is really critical for a couple of reasons in allowing us to be more fully prepared, and that there still is more to be done so that we can fully and safely move into phase 1. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Harris. One of the driving factors with the plan for reopening, not just for Charles County, but the entire state of Maryland and every state in our country, is focusing on the ability to conduct contact tracing. I was reading a report from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, and they talked about how data shows that one person can, on average, infect 2 to 3 people. And with that model, within a 2-week period of time, let's say 14 days, one person that is infected can change and end up with 15 people. And Johns Hopkins talks about the importance of contact tracing so that we can quickly identify those folks who are positive, but those folks who have been in contact with the person who tested positive. Now, I have followed this very closely, and I know that the state of Maryland has contracted with Newark to ramp up the contact tracing for our state. Based on what the organization is saying, is that they will increase and train and hire people to do contact tracing. And one of the things that I'm thinking and really weighs heavily is that we need to allow a couple weeks to make sure that we have the contact tracing in place so we can use that as a tool to help decrease the number of cases that we have in Charles County and statewide. When we listen to the report from our local hospital, their focus was on bed capacity. Unlike some states around the nation, it appears that Maryland has bed capacity. But as a commissioner, I want our first conversation, our first step, to talk about how can we, or what steps can we take to make sure we don't need to take up those beds. And so I'm thankful that my other 2 colleagues were also had the mindset of we need to have a planned reopening, one that is structured and that takes into account that it appears nationwide, starting at the federal level, we've been a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks behind from where we need to be. I would want us to focus on making sure that we can communicate how we need to reopen. And as Commissioner Collins said, that reopening is not going to appear, and we're not going to be living the way we lived, 2 months ago. But my comments yesterday really was focusing on recognizing statewide there's a few more things that need to be in place. With the contact tracing, it is my understanding that also with participating in Senator Ben Carton's town hall meeting yesterday, statewide in the next couple of weeks, we will have more of the testing materials that are needed to ensure that our residents can be tested. So that is really surrounding my mindset of what the 2-week delay and why it was needed.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. Those details are very helpful for the public to know and I think understand about the decision that you all made. Commissioner Coates, I know you're a small business owner. You definitely mentioned last night that this experience did inform your decision, but also that, you're really concerned about the public safety overall and the steps that we take to remain cautiously moving forward and make sure everything's in place before we do that. Can you talk a little bit more about your mindset and how you're thinking about the gradual reopen to phase one and the importance of waiting until May 29th to do so?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. Yes, I do want to reiterate that I'm a small business owner. I have been, again, impacted by this disease. It is not pleasant. It's across the board. We all have been impacted if you own a business, and we knew that. None of us asked for this disease. None of us planned for it. And we also realize it has no color, has no boundaries, no socioeconomic, certainly not political. And so I'm looking forward to working with our community business owners overall and stakeholders to determine a strategic plan for reopening. Some thoughts I had was, even assisting business at the point of educating them and the community of what we mean by social business. Really reiterating phase one plan, business plan. We know that there are some businesses that are operating as of today. We know that we've had some concerns. Citizens have called in and had issues with some businesses and not practicing some of the executive order of social distancing. A majority of our business and citizens and communities are wearing masks, but I think that the plan we need to really reiterate this plan and put this business plan to the educational test. I think that our businesses also really need to be equipped correctly. They need to make sure that testing is available. I know that that's another issue that we have. I don't know if that's going to get resolved in 2 weeks, but we certainly would like to try or at least see a plan put in place for this. As I said with my colleagues, I appreciate their support as well in this decision. And it was a tough decision as far as a business owner. Yes, but this is a decision that was made for the health and well-being of our citizens as a whole.
Thank you. Commissioner Collins, let's turn back to you. I know that the governor gave a lot of latitude to each local jurisdiction to determine the timing of going into phase one. And so many of our more suburban neighbors to the north of us and in the surrounding metro region have decided to also remain in a stay-at-home order until the end of May or even into June. Can you talk about the importance of a regional approach and what steps you see the county taking in collaboration with our neighboring jurisdictions to ensure the public safety and ensure that we're ready for phase one when we get to May 29th?
Yes. As you know, Charles County is a member of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Government. We're also members of the Tri-County Council. That puts our county in a very unique position of essentially being a part of the metropolitan region, but also, and more traditionally, in the eyes of many of our older residents, a part of the Southern Maryland region. I think there's benefits in maintaining our membership with both, because I think at the end of the day, the focus of our county should be to provide as many opportunities for economic growth and development as we possibly can. As it relates to a collaborative response to this pandemic, the regional approach is useful because we are able to take advantage of the many resources that exist for members of, as an example, COG, to address this COVID-19 pandemic. Just my participation with COG has given me a wealth of information from the perspective of jurisdictions that are not only in the state of Maryland, but also the District of Columbia and Virginia. We have been consistent and we've been very effective in our approach. One thing that came out of the presentation yesterday was the actual degree of success that the county has maintained in ensuring that our citizens are as safe as they can possibly be during the course of this crisis. So the regional approach has a benefit for us. It also creates a dynamic that I don't think any of us could have really anticipated. To the north, the challenges because of the size of Prince George's County and because it's one of the more heavily populated communities in the state of Maryland, it poses challenges for that government that has been steadfast in ensuring that their efforts to attack the disease continue to move that community forward. To our south, it's a totally different dynamic. In terms of actual numbers, they're slightly lower than our numbers in St. Mary's and in Calvert County. But that still opens the door to necessary discussions on a regional basis. Because at the end of the day, I think I heard one of my colleagues use the term that this virus has no boundaries. I mean, jurisdictions and jurisdictional lines in the context of something like this are really, they're not even factual, if you will. I mean, they're almost illusions because there will always be some interactions between the various populations. And so continuing to talk and continuing to really work towards a collaborative, unified regional response will be our priority. And I'd like to close by just emphasizing that we recognize, and I'm saying every single board member, not just the three that voted to delay transitioning to phase one, all five of the Board of Commissioners recognize that our responsibility is to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens is our number one priority. That is absolutely the truth. I also understand at the end of the day the importance of ensuring that our small business owners are able to move forward and be in a position where they can get back to making money. So we were balancing all of these things. The citizens were able to hear a very transparent discussion. I hope that was useful to our residents, but I also hope in closing that the citizens also recognize that all of this entire board are moving forward with the idea that we are unified in our interest to ensure that all of our citizens are safe, and at the end of the day, we will be able to move forward in reigniting our overall economy.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. Commissioner Stewart, let's fast forward to May 29th. In your mind and in the minds of many of those you've been talking to, I know for the last few weeks, when we get to that date and we are ready to move into phase one, can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like and then what you've heard from the community about what they need to see in order to feel comfortable moving into phase one and how that's informed, of the important decision that you made last night?
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Yeah. When we reach May 29th and we move into phase one of the things that I'm hearing from community members is that, number one, folks are still concerned. I don't know many families that haven't been impacted by the pandemic. Folks are concerned about people disregarding the recommendations that have been set forth by the CDC. So as we move into reopening, I want to see that all residents are being responsible and being mindful that we would love to go back to where we were 4 or 5 months ago, but that's not possible at this time. We're going to have to pay close attention to making sure that we're still social distancing. We're using those disinfectant products to make sure that our hard surface areas are disinfected. We need to make sure that as we are going into businesses, we're being mindful of our health, our personal responsibility of ensuring that if we have those signs or symptoms, that we are not exposing other people to the virus. It is my hope that when May 29th comes, people are mindful that our lives will not look like they did 4 or 5 months ago. Now, with that being said, I am also fearful. I think if anyone is paying close attention to this pandemic worldwide or even across the country, we have had one of the most outspoken governors during this pandemic. And I do believe that Governor Hogan has shown that he will react. And so I'm fearful that when May 29th comes, and if people are not being mindful of the recommendations set forth by the CDC, and that our numbers spike, not just in Charles County, but statewide, I'm fearful that Governor Hogan would have to step back in and to issue another executive order for a stay-at-home order. What I'm looking at is that, mentally, that would just, be tough for folks to deal with. But financially, dealing with, economics, I want to make sure that we can open back up on the 29th and ensure that businesses won't have to turn right back around in a couple weeks or a month or two and close back down because our numbers increase. I ask all of our residents and folks who will visit Charles County, I ask all of our business owners to be mindful that if we do not put if we don't use the recommendations and we don't put processes in place to help protect us, we could possibly be looking at another executive order from Governor Hogan for a stay-at-home. And I think as an elected official, it is our responsibility to do everything that we can to ensure that we can avoid that in the future. We need to ensure that we have our lessons learned and understand how we need to plan for the future. And I believe as Commissioner Collins said, all 5 commissioners have shown that we are, working hard to ensure that we have policies in place. We have, monies in place to help small businesses, and we have policies in place to protect our residents, especially our vulnerable residents in our nursing homes. One of our nursing homes in the county was heavy hit with COVID-19 virus, and it's our responsibility to make the difficult decisions to ensure the safety of all. So yes, when May 29th comes, we will reopen, but I'm hopeful that everyone will take the necessary steps and measures to ensure the safety of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. That's a really important point that I want to reemphasize here is that the governor's plan does have the flexibility to move ahead or move backwards if the spread of the virus suddenly spikes. So we have to keep in mind that everybody needs to be responsible for ensuring they do what they can to maintain use of face masks, personal hygiene, and hand washing, and all the social distancing measures that we've been doing over the past few weeks that has shown some success in driving the trend downward. Commissioner Coates, I'm going to turn to you now. I know that all of each of the commissioners really has lifelong roots here in the county. A couple of you have generational roots in the county, including you. And I know there's strong emotions on all sides about, whether we're ready to move forward or not. Can you speak to the people's feelings about this decision, and what do you want to say to the public about the fears and where we're at, and how we can come together to move forward and get past where we're at now?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. Yes, I do. Funny that you mentioned that. I do have quite a bit of ties and deep roots in this county. And I think that's what makes me so passionate about doing what I do. So, the community is scared. I received tons and tons of correspondence about them being afraid, about what do we do next, and how do we bring our community together. We know, as of today, business will not be as usual. As my colleague reiterated, we're not going back to where we were 4 months ago. And but what we can do is try to look for a brighter future ahead. And that brighter future, includes us all together, my colleagues, community, business partners, and the like, all working together. Not to lose hope, but we need to work together to get through this. And so I call upon all of them and the community to come together and let's do this. Let's knock this out the ballpark. Let's get this virus mitigated and keep as low as possible. As we all know, one life lost is one life too many. And I don't want that to be my family member, nor do I want that to be the community's family members. And with that said, I just want to make sure that, as a community, we're all in this together. Let's do this. And I look forward to working with every single one of my stakeholders, community, business, leadership, and nonprofit community. So the whole gamut. It's going to take a village. It's going to take a village and a team effort to do this. So let's do this.
Thank you, Commissioner Coates. Appreciate that. Commissioner President Collins, I'll give you one final word.
No, I think we've all summed it up. We will continue to move forward. We will continue to be as vigilant as we possibly can to respond as a government to this very unprecedented time. We are open to speaking to anyone in our community about how we can address concerns that are being raised, including our business community, including our citizens in general. And so my closing remarks are that we are here to serve you. Our decisions are based on the feedback that we receive from our citizens. And I will conclude with that.
Commissioners, thank each one of you for joining us today and taking the time to talk to the community about where we're at and where we're headed. I know you all have very busy schedules, so appreciate you taking time out to speak with us about the details of what has occurred this week and how we're going to move forward together. I just want to remind the community, I know we haven't had a chance to speak to you directly in a few weeks, but please stay tuned to our website, charlescountymd.gov, our television channel, Comcast Channel 95, Verizon Channel 10. We've got social media, Facebook and Twitter, where you can follow us to get the latest information updates. We've got a YouTube channel, and we've got our podcast. And I just encourage you to stay tuned and let us know what's going on with you as well. We appreciate your feedback at all times. So thank you for listening today, and we will definitely be back on a regular routine of updates and communications as we get towards May 29th. Thank you for listening.